A billionaire's young daughter secretly made a help signal at the airport. A soldier noticed and did something unbelievable. The alarm clock didn't even need to go off that morning. Esme was already awake, her wide eyes fixed on her bedroom ceiling. Today was the day. Finally, after so many promises, so many next times, and when I have a moment, today she and her father were going on a trip together. Esme jumped out of bed and ran to the window. The sky was clear, perfect for flying. Her heart was beating so hard it felt like it wanted to leap out of her chest. She pulled out the little pink rolling suitcase she had packed 3 times the night before. Everything had to be perfect. "Daddy!" she called, slowly opening his bedroom door. Mr. Wren was on the phone, as always. He held up a finger, asking for a minute. The phone wedged between his shoulder and ear as he tried to close his own suitcase. "Yes, Marcus, I understand the urgency. But I'll be gone for a week. You have the authority to make the necessary decisions," he was saying in that voice Esme called his work voice, deeper and more serious than the voice he used with her. Esme sat on the edge of the bed, swinging her feet that didn't reach the floor. Her fingers tightened around the small silver keychain her father had given her for her last birthday. It had the letter W engraved on it, W for Wren, their last name. "So you never forget who you are," he had said, as if she could ever forget. "Ready for our big adventure?" Mr. Wren asked after hanging up the phone. "Ready for 1,000,000 years," Esme replied, jumping off the bed. Her father laughed, ruffling her hair. "1,000,000 years is a long time, Esme." "That's exactly how long I've been waiting to go on a trip with you," she answered, hugging his waist. Something in Mr. Wren's face shifted. The smile was still there, but his eyes looked sad for a moment. "I know I've made a lot of promises, sweetie, but this time will be different, okay? Just the 2 of us." During breakfast, Mr. Wren's phone rang 3 more times. He answered 2 and ignored the 3rd, winking at Esme as he said, "I'm on vacation now." In the car, Esme couldn't stop talking. She told him all about what she wanted to do at the theme park, the roller coasters she might be brave enough to ride, the characters she wanted to meet. "And can we have cotton candy every day, please?" she asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Maybe not every day," her father replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "But I promise we'll have a lot of fun." Esme watched her father's profile. He looked tired, he always did. He'd been running the company since her mother died, when Esme was just a baby. She didn't remember her mum, only knew her face from the pictures her dad kept on his nightstand. "This is going to be the best week ever," Esme said, nearly bouncing in her seat. "Better than Christmas and my birthday combined." Mr. Wren smiled, reaching over with his right hand to squeeze hers. "We'll do everything you want, Esme. No phone calls, no meetings, no work. Just the 2 of us." Esme tried not to remember the other times he had promised similar things. Like on her 5th birthday, when he showed up 2 hours late to the party because of an emergency at the office, or last winter break, when they were supposed to build a snowman together, but he was locked in his home office all day. This time would be different. It had to be. JFK Airport was crowded when they arrived. Esme had never flown before. Her eyes darted from side to side, trying to take everything in at once. People hurried by with huge suitcases. Screens showed numbers and letters that changed every minute, and there was a constant noise of announcements over the loudspeaker. "Hold my hand so you don't get lost," Mr. Wren said, and Esme squeezed her father's hand tightly. Nothing in the world would make her let go. They stopped at a counter, where a woman in a blue uniform smiled at them. "Good morning. May I see your passports and tickets, please?" Mr. Wren handed over the documents, and the woman started typing something into her computer. Esme bounced on her heels, impatient. She wanted to get through security, see the planes up close, and get on the one that would take them to the most special week of her life. "How old are you?" the woman asked, smiling at Esme. 6, she answered, holding up 6 fingers. "And it's my first time flying." "How exciting, you'll love it. It's like being a bird for a few hours." After check-in, they headed to the security line. Esme watched everything with fascination, people taking off their shoes and belts, putting purses and backpacks into bins that slid into a huge machine. "Can we sit by the window, Daddy? I want to see the clouds up close, Esme said as they waited in line. Of course. We requested window seats just for you, he replied, smiling at his daughter. Once they were through security, Esme started listing everything they would do on their first day at the park. First, we'll go to Mickey's house, then the train that goes all around the park, and then... Oh, can we see the parade too and the fireworks at night? Can we stay up late to see the fireworks? Mr. Wren laughed at the cascade of questions. Yes to all of that. We'll make a perfect plan when we get to the hotel, okay? Day by day. Esme's eyes shone so brightly, they looked like little stars. It's going to be the best trip in the world because we'll be together, she said, squeezing her father's hand. No phone, no work, no emergencies. Just us two, you promised. I promised, and I'll keep it, he said, crouching down to her level. These will be the best 7 days of our lives. They walked to the departure gate and found a place to sit. There was half an hour until boarding began. Esme opened the small backpack she carried as hand luggage and took out a little book. I brought this for us to read on the plane, she explained. My teacher said our ears might hurt when the plane goes up, so I thought reading together might help us forget the pain. Mr. Wren took the book. It was a story about a dragon who was afraid to fly. Our perfect choice, he said, carefully putting the book back in her backpack. That's when 3 men in dark uniforms approached. Esme noticed how they looked directly at her father, as if no one else around them existed. Mr. Thomas Wren, one of them, the tallest, asked. Her father's smile vanished. He stood up, frowning. Yes, that's me. We need to speak with you about an urgent matter, another man said, showing some kind of ID that Esme couldn't see clearly. Her father looked at her, then at the men, then back at her. His face had changed completely. He was no longer vacation dad. He was work dad, serious, worried. So I'll wait here for a minute, he said, letting go of her hand and trying to smile. I'll be right back. But Daddy, are we going to miss the plane? Esme asked, a lump starting to form in her throat. We're not going to miss anything, he assured her, though his tone didn't match his words. It's just a quick chat. Save our seats, okay? Promise you'll be right back, she insisted, fear growing inside her. I promise, sweetie. Just a minute. He lightly ruffled her hair, as he always did when saying goodbye, even for a short time. Then he followed the men to a side door that Esme had never noticed before. The door closed, and he was gone. Esme stood there, hugging herself. Her fingers found the keychain in her coat pocket, and she squeezed it tightly. The letter W gleamed under the airport's fluorescent lights. 1 minute passed, then 2, 5, 10. People came and went. No one seemed to notice the small girl standing alone near gate 27. And then the loudspeaker announced, "Final boarding call for flight 752 to Orlando." Esme looked at the door where her father had disappeared. It was still closed, no sign of him. She held the keychain tighter, as if that small piece of metal was the only thing that could bring her father back. But he didn't come back. The minutes turned into half an hour. Esme remained standing near gate 27, clutching the keychain with the letter W between her fingers. The plane had already left. She saw it take off through the window, carrying away all the dreams of the perfect week she had planned with her dad. The people around her didn't seem to notice the little girl by herself. They walked by hurriedly, dragging their suitcases, talking on their phones, checking their tickets. An airport is a place where everyone has a destination, everyone except Esme. "Final boarding call for flight 843 to Chicago," a voice announced over the loudspeaker. Esme looked one more time at the door where her father had vanished. It was still closed. No one went in, no one came out. She tried to be brave. She tried to believe that her father would come back any second, that he would explain everything. Maybe they could even catch another flight. But the lump in her throat grew. Fear spread through her body like a chill. "Miss..." An airline employee stopped beside her. "Are you waiting for someone?" "My dad," Esme replied, her voice small. "He told me to wait here." "How long ago?" Esme shrugged. She couldn't say for sure. It felt like an eternity. "Where did he go?" the woman asked. Esme pointed to the side door. The employee frowned. "That door, are you sure?" Esme nodded. The woman looked confused for a moment, then smiled. That smile adults give when they think kids are making up stories. Let's wait together for a little bit, okay? I'm sure he'll be back soon. But the employee was called on her radio a few minutes later and had to leave. She promised to come back, but she didn't. Esme sat in an empty chair, her legs dangling, not reaching the floor. She felt invisible. Worse than that, she felt forgotten. That's when she remembered what Mrs. Bennet, her nanny, had taught her. Mrs. Bennet was a grey-haired lady who stayed with Esme when her father had to work late, which was almost every day. One of those nights, after watching a show on TV, Mrs. Bennet taught Esme a special signal. "It's a silent call for help," she had explained. "If you're ever in danger and you can't speak, make this sign. Someone who knows what it means will understand and help." The signal was simple. First, show your palm, then tuck your thumb across it, and finally close your other fingers over the thumb. Esme and Mrs. Bennet practiced it several times until she could do the movement perfectly. "It's like a secret between people who want to help," the nanny said, "a code that good people know." Now, sitting alone in the airport, Esme decided to try it. Maybe a good person was nearby. She raised her right hand, showed her palm, tucked her thumb, and closed her fingers over it. She repeated the motion several times, looking around. No one seemed to notice. People rushed past, some glanced at her for a second, but then looked away, assuming she was waiting for someone or that it wasn't their problem. Esme kept making the signal. Once, twice, 10 times. Tears started to well up in her eyes, but she held them back. Her father always said she was a strong girl. She didn't want to disappoint him. On a bench across the way, Caleb Mason watched the airport's hustle and bustle without really seeing it. His eyes were there, but his mind was wandering to distant places. The mountains of Afghanistan, the deserts of Iraq, the military hospital where he spent 3 months recovering. Places that had changed him, places that never completely left him. He wore a simple jacket that hid the scars on his left arm and a worn-out cap with his unit's insignia. At 32, Caleb looked older, not because of his facial features, but because of the weight in his eyes. He had come to the airport to pick up a friend, another veteran who was coming to visit. The flight was delayed, so he was just waiting, letting his thoughts drift as he watched the people. That's when he noticed the girl, small, brown hair in a messy ponytail, sitting alone with a backpack at her feet. Caleb watched her for a few minutes, expecting an adult to show up for her. No one came. Then he saw the signal. He recognized it immediately. Everyone in his unit had been trained to identify distress signals, including this one, which had become common on social media in recent years. Caleb felt a tightness in his chest. It was the same tightness he felt when something was wrong on patrol. The same instinct that had once saved his life and the lives of his comrades. He hesitated. It wasn't his business. Someone would surely help her. A security guard, an airport employee. But no one seemed to notice, and the girl kept making the signal with less and less hope on her face. Caleb stood up. His legs moved almost of their own accord, crossing the corridor to where the girl was. "Hey there, little one. Are you okay?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance and speaking in a low voice so as not to scare her. Esme looked up. She saw a tall man with a worn-out cap. He wasn't smiling like the other adults who had spoken to her. He looked concerned, genuinely. "You saw my signal," she said, not as a question, but as a statement. Caleb nodded slowly. "I did. Someone taught you well. Are you lost?" Esme looked toward the side door once more. "My dad went in there with some men. He said he'd be back in a minute, but it's been a long time." Caleb followed her gaze. He knew that door. It was one of the entrances to the airport's administrative area, where the security offices were also located. "How long ago did he go in?" Esme shrugged again. "Our plane already left," she said, pointing to gate 27. Caleb checked the information board. Flight 752 to Orlando had departed almost an hour ago. "Do you want me to call someone to help? A security guard or—" "No," Esme interrupted, her eyes widening with fear. "They were like security guards, the men who took my dad." Caleb frowned. The situation was getting more complicated than he had imagined. "What's your name?" he asked. Esme. Esme Wren. I'm Caleb, he said, sitting in the chair next to her, still keeping some distance. Look, Esme, maybe your dad is just dealing with a problem and will be back soon. Do you want me to wait here with you? Esme looked into his eyes for a long moment, as if assessing whether she could trust him. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out and took his hand. Take me with you. I'll tell you everything. The sentence caught Caleb off guard. Taking an unknown child away from the airport was not a good idea. It was, in fact, a terrible idea. Esme, I don't think that's a good— please, she interrupted, squeezing his hand. I'm scared of them. The men who took my dad. Caleb felt that tightness in his chest again. His gut was screaming. Something was very wrong here. Let's do this, he said, thinking fast. First, let's talk to someone from the airport. Explain the situation and— No, Esme insisted, pulling his hand. Nobody believes me. They think I'm making up stories. Caleb took a deep breath. The girl seemed genuinely terrified, and his training had taught him to trust his instincts. His phone buzzed. It was a text from the friend he was there to pick up. Flight delayed another 2 hours. I'll let you know when I'm close. Caleb made a decision. He would help the girl find her father, but through official channels, it was the right thing to do. Let's go talk to airport security, he said. I'll stay with you the whole time, I promise. But as they stood up, Esme froze, her face turned pale. What's wrong? Caleb asked. That man, she whispered, looking at a spot behind Caleb. He turned discreetly. A man in a dark suit was scanning the terminal, seemingly looking for someone. He had the same kind of uniform Esme had described. Is he one of them? Caleb asked quietly. Esme nodded, clutching her backpack to her chest. In that moment, Caleb made a second decision, one he knew could get him into trouble, but that his gut told him was the right one. Come with me, he said, taking Esme's hand. Dad, we're getting out of here, and then we'll figure out what happened to your dad. They walked quickly toward the exit, Caleb making sure to stay between Esme and the man in the suit. When they got to the parking garage, he led her to his car, an older grey sedan. I promise we'll find your dad, he said, helping her into the back seat and fastening her seatbelt. But first I need to get you somewhere safe. During the drive, Esme was silent, hugging her backpack. Caleb checked the rearview mirror every few seconds, making sure they weren't being followed. Can you tell me what happened from the beginning? He asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Esme took a deep breath before she began. My dad and I were going to Orlando. We were going to Disney World. He promised this time would be different, that there would be no work, just the two of us. Her voice faltered a bit, but she continued. We were waiting to board when 3 men came. They showed my dad something. I think it was a kind of wallet. They said they needed to talk to him. He told me to wait, said he'd be back in a minute. And these men, what were they wearing? Caleb asked. Dark suits, all the same. They looked important. Did your dad seem to know them? Esme shook her head. He looked worried. I've never seen him with that look on his face before. Caleb thought for a moment. Could they be federal agents? Plainclothes police? Why would they approach someone at an airport, just as he was about to board a flight with his daughter? Has your dad ever had trouble with the police before? He asked, choosing his words carefully. No, Esme answered, indignant. My dad is good. He works a lot. He has a big company. What kind of company? Computers, I think. He's always talking about programs and systems. It's really boring. Caleb smiled slightly at her childish honesty. 20 minutes later, they arrived at Caleb's apartment. It was a simple place on the 2nd floor of a 3-story building in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. It had a small living room connected to an open kitchen, 1 bedroom and a bathroom. Everything was neat and clean, but without many personal details, as if Caleb didn't spend much time there or didn't care to make the space feel cozier. It's not much, but it's safe, he said, placing his keys on the counter. Esme walked in slowly, looking at everything. She stopped in front of a shelf with a few photos. In one of them, Caleb was in a military uniform, standing next to other men in uniform. You're a soldier, she said. I was, Caleb corrected her. I'm in the reserves now. Esme sat on the couch, seeming smaller and more fragile than she had at the airport. "They took my daddy. What if he doesn't come back? He's the only person I have." The vulnerability in her voice hit Caleb like a punch. He remembered when he lost friends in combat, the emptiness that followed, but they were adults who had chosen that path. Esme was just a child. "We're going to find him," he promised, sitting in the armchair across from the sofa. "But we have to be smart. First, we need to understand what happened." Esme clutched the keychain between her fingers. "Do you believe me? That men took my dad?" "I believe you," Caleb answered sincerely, "and I'm going to help you find out where he is." "How?" "I have some friends who might be able to help. Let's start by looking up information on your dad." "What's his full name?" "Thomas Wren," Esme replied. "He owns Wren Technologies." Caleb got his laptop. A quick search confirmed what Esme had said. Thomas Wren was the CEO and founder of Wren Technologies, a mid-sized company specializing in systems security. There was nothing about an arrest or trouble with the law. While he searched, Caleb noticed that Esme had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from the day's stress. He placed a blanket over her and went back to the computer. What had started as a simple act of kindness had now entangled him in something much bigger. Caleb knew he should have taken the girl to the police or to social services. It would have been the correct protocol. But something in his gut told him that Esme was in real danger, and that perhaps her father was too. He looked at the sleeping girl and made his third decision of the day. He would not leave her alone. Not until he was sure she was safe. Not until he found Thomas Wren. After all, if there was one thing his years in the army had taught him, it was to never leave someone behind. Esme woke up to the smell of toast and the soft sound of plates being set on a table. For a moment, she imagined she was at home, with her dad making Sunday breakfast, the only days he didn't leave early for work. But when she opened her eyes, reality hit her like a wave. She was on a stranger's couch, covered by a blue blanket that wasn't hers. Caleb noticed she was awake and smiled from the open kitchen, separated from the living room only by a counter. "Good morning, sleepyhead," he said. "Or rather, good afternoon. You slept for a long time." Esme sat up, rubbing her eyes. The clock on the wall read 2:17 p.m. "I slept that much?" she asked, her voice still hoarse from sleep. "I think you needed the rest," Caleb replied. "Are you hungry? I made a snack." Esme's stomach rumbled in response. She hadn't eaten since the rushed breakfast with her dad before they left for the airport. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Yes," she answered, getting up from the couch and carrying the blanket with her. Caleb had set the small kitchen table. There was toast, cheese, ham, a pitcher of orange juice, and another with milk. Nothing fancy, but to Esme it looked like a feast. "I didn't know what you like, so I made a little of everything," he explained, pulling out a chair for her. Esme climbed into the chair, still wrapped in the blanket, and looked at the food with hungry eyes. She took a piece of toast and put some cheese on it. "Can I have jam too?" she asked, pointing to the closed jar. "Of course," Caleb said, pushing the jar toward her. "It's strawberry." "My favorite," Esme exclaimed, the first genuine smile since they met lighting up her face for a brief moment. Caleb watched as she ate. The girl alternated between big bites and looking around, curiously examining his simple kitchen. Her eyes often stopped on a small framed picture on the wall next to the refrigerator, a photo of Caleb with a group of other soldiers, all smiling, arms around each other's shoulders. "Were those your friends?" Esme asked, pointing to the photo. Caleb looked at the image, and something in his eyes changed like a cloud passing over the sun. "Yes," he answered simply. "Do you still see them?" Caleb poured her a glass of juice before answering. "Some of them. Others, I don't see anymore." Esme seemed to understand that there was something sad in those words. She went back to eating her toast in silence for a few moments. "I just got back home a little while ago," Caleb said, breaking the silence. "I was on a mission overseas." Esme looked at him with curiosity. "Like in the movies, with guns and explosions?" A sad smile appeared on Caleb's face. "Sometimes it felt like a movie." "Yes. But it wasn't as exciting as in the movies." "Did you fight the bad guys?" Caleb pondered how to explain the complexity of war to a 6-year-old. It's not as simple as good guys versus bad guys, he finally replied. But yes, I was there to protect people. Like you're protecting me now? Esme asked, her eyes fixed on him. Yeah, something like that. Esme took another bite of toast, thoughtful. Do you have a family? She asked after swallowing. Caleb shook his head. No, my parents passed away a few years ago. I don't have any siblings. So you're alone too, Esme concluded, with the direct clarity only children possess. I have some friends, other soldiers. We look out for each other. Esme nodded, as if that made perfect sense to her. My mommy died when I was born, she said suddenly, the words rushing out, as if she needed to get them off her chest. My daddy has always taken care of me by himself. I'm all he has, too. Caleb felt a lump in his throat. The frankness of the confession, the pain behind the simple words, it was as if Esme was handing him something precious and fragile. He has pictures of her on his nightstand, Esme continued. Sometimes, when he thinks I'm asleep, I see him looking at them. He gets sad, but he never talks to me about it. She placed the keychain on the table. The letter W shone under the kitchen light. He gave me this for my birthday. He said it's so I remember who I am, even when he's not around. Caleb reached out and touched the keychain, then held Esme's small hand. You're not alone, he said, his voice firm despite the emotion. We're going to find your dad, I promise. Esme squeezed his hand as if the grip could turn his words into reality. But what if we can't? Then we'll keep looking, Caleb answered. I won't give up. Esme's eyes studied his face, searching for any sign of a lie. What she found must have been enough because she nodded slightly. My dad says promises are sacred, she commented. And he's right, Caleb agreed. That's why I don't make promises I can't keep. Esme took another piece of toast and spread jam on it. Her appetite had returned a little. When did you get back home? She asked, genuinely interested. 2 months ago, Caleb replied. I'm still getting used to being back. Is it different? Very. Over there, everything was intense. Every day, every moment. Here, sometimes it feels like time moves too slowly. Do you miss it? Caleb hesitated. Not the war, but the clarity. Over there, I knew exactly what I needed to do each day. Protect my buddies, complete the mission, survive. Here, he let the sentence die, realizing he was saying too much for a child. Here it's confusing sometimes, Esme completed, surprising him. Like now, I don't know what to do without my dad. Caleb looked at her with new appreciation. There was a wisdom in those childish eyes, an understanding beyond her years. That's exactly it, he agreed. But you know what? Sometimes we find clarity when we help others. That's what I learned in the army. Like when you helped me at the airport. Yes. In that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Esme smiled slightly. I'm glad you saw my signal. Me too, Caleb agreed. So now let's finish this snack and then think about our next step, okay? Esme nodded, taking one more piece of toast. As she ate, Caleb watched the girl and thought about the man who had been taken at the airport. A single father, as she had said, whose daughter was everything to him. We'll find him, Caleb repeated, more to himself than to Esme. And though he didn't know how he would do it yet, he knew it was a promise he had to keep. For Esme, and maybe for himself too. The afternoon wore on as Caleb washed the snack dishes. Through the kitchen window, the clouds in the sky darkened, heralding rain. Esme was sitting on the couch, flipping through an old magazine she found on the coffee table. She paused on every page with colorful pictures, as if trying to distract herself from her worry. Caleb dried his hands on a dish towel and looked at the clock. Almost 5 in the afternoon. More than a day had passed since Thomas Wren disappeared at the airport. They couldn't just keep waiting. Esme, he called, sitting in the armchair across from the sofa. Yeah, we need to talk about what we're going to do now. She looked up from the magazine, immediately alert. Did you find out where my dad is? Not yet, but I think it's time we go to the police. Esme slammed the magazine shut, as if Caleb's words had set off an alarm inside her. No, she said, shaking her head so hard her already messy ponytail swung from side to side. So we can't go to the police. Caleb leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees to get closer to her level. "Why not, Esme? The police can help us find your dad." "What if they're like those men? What if they want to take my dad away too?" There was a tremor in her voice that made Caleb hesitate. Esme's fear was genuine and specific. It wasn't just the natural fear of a child separated from her father, but something more. "Do you think those men at the airport were police officers?" he asked carefully. Esme shrugged, a small, uncertain gesture. "I don't know. They didn't say. They just showed Daddy something, like a wallet. An ID. I think so." Caleb thought for a moment. They could have been police, federal agents, or any other authority. But why would they take Thomas Wren just as he was about to board a flight with his daughter for a vacation? And why offer no explanation, not even to the child? "Esme," he said, softening his voice. "If your dad was taken by authorities, the police will know. They can tell us where he is and why. What if he's in danger? That's exactly why we need help. I promised to find your dad, and I'm going to keep that promise. But I can't do it alone." Esme pulled her knees up, hugging them to her chest. "My dad says not everyone who wears a uniform is good," she mumbled. "He showed me how to check if a police officer is real. You have to see their badge and ask for their ID number." Caleb frowned. That was unusual advice to give such a young child. "Your dad taught you that?" Esme nodded. "He says it's important for me to know how to take care of myself when he's not around, like the signal misses. Bennett taught me." Another detail that didn't seem normal. Thomas Wren seemed to be preparing his daughter for dangerous situations. "Why? Has your dad ever had trouble before? Has anyone ever tried to hurt you too?" "No," Esme replied, then hesitated. "But sometimes he locks all the doors at night and checks the windows twice. And we have an alarm system at our house that makes a loud noise if someone tries to get in." "A lot of houses have alarms," Caleb said, trying not to let his growing concern show. "That's normal." But it wasn't normal for a father to teach his 6-year-old daughter how to verify if a police officer was legitimate, nor was the level of fear Esme was showing. "Look," Caleb said, trying a new approach. "What if we call the police first? We can ask questions over the phone without having to go there." Esme considered the idea for a moment. "Will they come here?" "Not if we don't want them to. We'll just ask some questions, see if they know anything about your dad." After a few more seconds of thought, Esme reluctantly nodded. "Okay, but if they say bad things, we hang up." "Deal." Caleb picked up his phone and looked for the number of the nearest police precinct. Before dialing, however, he had a better idea. There was a detective he had met through a veterans support program, Mark Sutton, a good man, the kind Caleb would trust. He found the number and dialed, hoping Sutton still worked in the same department. After 2 rings, a deep voice answered. "Detective Sutton." "Mark, it's Caleb Mason." There was a brief pause. "Caleb, long time no see. How are you?" "I'm doing okay, look. I'm calling because I need help with something." "Delicate." Sutton's voice changed, becoming more professional. "What happened?" Caleb looked at Esme, who was watching his every move with attentive eyes. "Can I call you back in 5 minutes? I need to talk in private." "Sure. I'll be waiting." Caleb hung up and turned his attention back to Esme. "I'm going to talk to him in the other room, okay? He's a friend of mine, a detective who can help us, but I need to explain the situation first." "Are you going to tell him about me?" Esme asked, her voice small. "I'm going to tell him I'm trying to help you find your dad. This is important, Esme. This man is trustworthy, I promise." Esme looked down, considering. "If you think he can help find my dad, I think he can," Caleb said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Can you stay here and watch TV while I talk to him? I won't be long." He turned on the television to a cartoon channel, then went into the bedroom, leaving the door ajar so he could hear if Esme needed anything. In the bedroom, he sat on the edge of the bed and called Sutton again. "Mark, I've got a complicated situation here," he began, keeping his voice low. "Yesterday, at the airport, I found a 6-year-old girl who had been left alone. Her father was taken by 3 men in suits before their flight. She's with me now. You have a missing child at your house. Sutton's voice was a mix of surprise and concern. "Caleb, you need to bring her to the precinct immediately. There must be a police report, maybe even an Amber Alert." "That's the problem. There's nothing. I've checked the news to call the airport. Nobody has reported a missing child. Nobody knows anything about a Thomas Wren." "Who?" "Her father, Thomas Wren, owner of Wren Technologies. The girl says he was approached by 3 men who showed some kind of ID and took him to a side room at the airport. He never came back." Sutton was silent for a moment. "This was yesterday, and no one's reported it." "Exactly. That's why I'm worried. The girl, Esme, is terrified of going to the police. She says her dad taught her to be wary of authorities." "That is odd," Sutton admitted. "Look, I can check if there's any arrest or detention record for this Thomas Wren. If he was legally taken by authorities, there has to be a record somewhere. That would be great. But Caleb," Sutton continued, his tone more serious, "you need to bring the girl in. Harboring a missing child is a serious problem." "I know that, but I need to be sure she'll be safe. Something isn't right about this whole story, Mark. Why hasn't anyone reported it? Why is there no alert? Her father's been missing for over 24 hours. Sutton sighed on the other end of the line. "I'll check what I can find out. Give me a few hours. But you need to come to the precinct today, Caleb. Understood?" "Understood. Thanks, Mark." Caleb hung up and sat on the bed for a moment, thinking. Sutton's reaction confirmed his suspicions. The situation was abnormal. Under normal circumstances, the disappearance of a child and her father would have triggered an immediate alert. When he returned to the living room, he found Esme sitting exactly where he had left her. But she wasn't watching the cartoons. Her eyes were fixed on the door, waiting for him. "What did he say?" she asked as soon as Caleb entered the room. "He's going to help us," Caleb replied, sitting next to her on the couch. "He's going to check if there's any information about your dad and call us back." "And then?" Caleb hesitated. He didn't want to lie to her. "Then we'll probably have to go to the station to talk to him in person." Esme's eyes immediately filled with tears. "No. What if they take him away forever? What if they take me too? I don't want to go to an orphanage." The tears started streaming down her face. Caleb felt his heart ache. He wanted to hug her, but he didn't know if she would accept that kind of comfort from him, still practically a stranger. "Nobody is going to take you to an orphanage, Esme," he said firmly. "I won't let that happen." "Promise?" she asked between sobs. "I promise. I will protect you." To his surprise, Esme moved across the couch and threw herself against him, hugging him tightly. Caleb froze for a moment, then wrapped his arms around her small shoulders. "It's going to be okay," he whispered, feeling her tears soaking his shirt. "We're going to find your dad." They stayed like that for a while, until Esme's sobs subsided. She slowly pulled away, wiping her face with her hands. "Sorry," she mumbled. "You don't need to be sorry," Caleb said. "It's normal to be scared. My dad says I shouldn't cry in front of people. Sometimes crying is what we need to do. There's nothing wrong with it." Esme sniffled, seeming a little calmer. "Do even soldiers cry?" she asked. Caleb smiled sadly. "Do even soldiers?" The rain started to fall outside, fat drops pattering against the window. The sky darkened completely, and Caleb turned on the living room lights. The two sat in silence for a while, just listening to the sound of the rain. "What are we going to do now?" Esme finally asked. "We're going to wait for Detective Sutton to call us back. In the meantime, how about we watch a movie? I have some DVDs over there on the shelf." She nodded and went to the small shelf where Caleb kept a few movies. There wasn't much, mostly action films and some comedies, but among them, Esme found an animated movie about a little fish who gets lost and then finds his father again. Caleb didn't remember buying that DVD, but he was glad it was there. They watched the movie together, Esme curled up in the blanket in the corner of the couch and Caleb on the other end, giving her space. As the story unfolded on the screen, Caleb realized it might not have been the best choice. It was about separation, loss, and the fear of never seeing a loved one again. But Esme seemed engrossed, her attentive eyes following the little fish's every move on his journey. An hour passed. The phone didn't ring. Caleb started to get restless. Sutton had said he would call in a few hours, but the wait felt endless. Every minute that passed was another minute Thomas Wren was missing, another minute of anguish for Esme. When the movie reached a particularly sad scene, Caleb noticed Esme take the keychain out of her pocket and squeeze it tightly in her fingers. The letter W glinted in the light from the television. "He said he would stay with me," she mumbled, so quietly Caleb almost didn't hear. "I just wish he liked staying with me." The words, spoken with such sadness by such a small voice, hit Caleb like a physical blow. He knew that feeling of being left behind, of not being important enough for someone to stay. He remembered his last mission, the promises he had made to his comrades. "I'll cover you. I'll be there in 5. We're all coming home." Promises he couldn't keep, faces he would never see again except in his nightmares. "I'm sure your dad loves staying with you," he said, trying to push the memories away. "Sometimes adults have problems they need to solve." "He always has problems to solve," Esme replied, still looking at the keychain. "He always has meetings, calls, work trips. I thought this time would be different. He promised." Caleb didn't know what to say. He didn't know Thomas Wren, didn't know what kind of father he was, but he knew the pain in Esme's eyes. It was real and too deep for such a young child. People sometimes can't keep their promises, even when they really want to, he said finally. Not because they don't care, but because we don't always control what happens. Like how you couldn't save your friends. The question caught him off guard. Esme had seen the picture on the wall, had noticed how he looked at it. Children see more than adults imagine. "Yeah," he answered honestly, "like how I couldn't save all of them." "It wasn't your fault," Esme said, turning to look him in the eye. "So just like it's not my dad's fault that those men took him." There was a wisdom in that sentence, an understanding that went beyond her age. Caleb felt a lump in his throat. "You're right," he managed to say. "It's not his fault." "Then why does it still hurt so much?" Caleb had no answer for that. Instead of words, he reached his hand across the couch. Esme hesitated for only a second before placing her small hand in his. They stayed that way, connected by that simple touch, while on the screen, the little fish continued his search for his lost father. The rain was falling harder now, turning the world outside into a grey blur. And somewhere, beyond that curtain of water, Thomas Wren was also waiting. Caleb had to believe that for the girl beside him. The phone rang, making them both jump. Caleb stood up quickly and answered it. "Hello?" "Caleb, it's Mark," said the voice of Detective Sutton. "I found something on Thomas Wren, and it's not good." "What did you find out?" Caleb asked, moving away slightly so Esme couldn't hear. The girl was still on the couch, her eyes fixed on the television, but Caleb knew she was listening. "Thomas Wren is being investigated for financial fraud," Sutton said, his voice grave on the other end of the line. "There's evidence of suspicious movements in his company's accounts over the last 3 months. Is he guilty?" "I'm not sure. The transfers were made using his credentials, but there's something strange about the pattern. Small amounts leaving at regular intervals, sent to offshore accounts." Caleb ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the information. How does that explain why he was taken? Possibly. The men could have been federal agents, but here's the problem. There's no official record of detention. I've checked with every agency. If the feds took him, they're keeping it off the books. Caleb looked at Esme, who was now pretending to watch the movie but was clearly trying to listen. "Well, I need to see you in person to talk more about this," he said, "but I can't leave her alone." "Bring the girl," Sutton replied. "I have a secure room here. She can stay with one of our social workers while we talk." "I don't know if that's a good idea. She's terrified of the idea of going to the police." "Caleb," Sutton's voice grew more serious, "you don't have a choice. You have to bring her in. This situation, it's complicated. And the longer you stay with her without notifying the authorities, the worse it gets for you." Caleb knew he was right. As much as he wanted to protect Esme, he couldn't keep hiding her. "We'll be there in an hour," he said finally. "I'll be waiting." When he hung up, Esme was already looking directly at him, the movie completely forgotten. "We have to go to the police, don't we?" she asked, her voice small. Caleb nodded. sitting down beside her on the couch. "Yes, Esme? We have to. Detective Sutton found out some things about your dad that might help us find him. Bad things." He hesitated. He didn't want to lie to her, but he also didn't want to scare her even more. "Things we need to understand better," he finally answered. "Remember the promise I made? I'll stay with you the whole time." "I won't let anyone take you." Esme stared at her own hands for a moment, then looked up at him. "Okay, let's go." The police station was relatively calm when they arrived. Sutton was waiting for them at the entrance and led them down a side corridor, avoiding the main area filled with uniformed officers. A kindness Caleb appreciated, knowing Esme's fear. The room they entered was small but cozy, with a few plants, a comfortable sofa, and a low table with children's books and some toys. A middle-aged woman with a gentle smile introduced herself as Mrs. Miller, a social worker. "Hello, Esme," she said, crouching down to the girl's level. "How about we stay here and draw while your friend Caleb talks with Detective Sutton?" Esme looked at Caleb, uncertain. "Will you be back soon?" "I promise. I'll be in the next room, and you can call for me at any time." After a few more reassurances, Esme agreed to stay with Mrs. Miller. Caleb and Sutton went into a conference room where several documents were spread across the table. "Wren Technologies is a digital security firm," Sutton explained, pointing to a report. "They develop protection systems for large corporations, some government agencies too. Thomas Wren founded it 12 years ago. And the money? It started about 3 months ago. Small transfers went between $5,000 and $15,000 each, always to different offshore accounts. In total, almost $1 million has been moved. And they think it was Thomas." Sutton hesitated, flipping through more documents. The transfers were authorized with his credentials, but there are inconsistencies. On at least 2 occasions, records show he was in video conferences with clients at the exact moment the transfers were made. So someone could be using his access, Caleb concluded. "That's what it looks like. And there's more. We found recent emails where Thomas was requesting a discreet audit of the system. It seems he suspected something was wrong and was investigating internally." Caleb absorbed the information, the pieces starting to fit together. So he might have been taken because he was about to find out who was stealing from the company. "It's a possibility," Sutton agreed. "We're investigating everyone who had access to the company's financial system. The main suspect right now is Patrick Wren, Thomas's brother and the company's vice president." "His brother?" Caleb frowned. Esme mentioned an uncle, but she didn't seem very close to him. According to employees, the brothers had a tense relationship. Patrick always wanted more control in the company, but Thomas had the final say on all major decisions. Sutton pushed a photograph across the table, a man a few years younger than Thomas Wren, with similar features but a harder expression. "Patrick has a history of gambling, debts, and he took a suspicious trip to the Bahamas 3 weeks ago, right after one of the largest transfers. Have you talked to him yet?" "Not yet. He's on a business trip. According to his secretary, we're monitoring him." Caleb glanced at the door, thinking of Esme in the next room. "And what about her? What happens now?" Sutton's expression softened slightly. "Officially, she should go to a temporary shelter while we look for other relatives. But if I'm right, and someone tried to silence Thomas Wren, Esme could be in danger too, especially if she saw something at the airport that could identify who's responsible." A heavy silence fell between them. Caleb felt a shiver run down his spine at the thought of someone wanting to harm Esme. "She stays with me," he said, with a firmness that surprised even himself. "I can protect her." "It's not that simple, Caleb. There are procedures." "Mark, you know my training. I can keep her safer than any shelter. And she trusts me." Sutton studied his friend's face for a long moment. "I'll have to pull some strings to make this work," he said finally. "But I agree, it might be the best option for now, at least until we find Thomas or confirm Patrick's involvement." When they returned to the room where Esme was, they found her concentrating on a drawing. Upon seeing Caleb, her face immediately lit up. "Look what I made," she exclaimed, holding up the drawing. 3 stick figures, a small one with long hair, a tall one with what looked like a cap, and another male figure separated from the first two. "It's us," she explained. "Me, you, and my dad when we find him." Caleb felt a lump in his throat. In just a few days, he had become part of this little girl's vision of a family. "It's beautiful," he managed to say. "We can put it on the fridge when we get home." "We're going back to your house?" Esme asked, hope evident in her voice. "Yes," Caleb replied, exchanging a look with Sutton. "You're going to stay with me while we look for your dad." On the way back, Esme was visibly more relaxed. The visit to the police station hadn't been the nightmare she had imagined, and the news that she would continue to stay with Caleb seemed to have calmed her. "Caleb," she called out as they were almost at the apartment, "do you think my dad is okay?" He looked at her in the rearview mirror. Her large, trusting eyes awaited an honest answer. "Your dad seems like a very smart and strong man," he replied. "He'll do anything to get back to you." "How do you know?" "Because that's what I would do if I had a daughter like you." The words came out naturally, and only afterward did he realize what he had said. But he didn't regret it. Somehow, in just a few days, this small, brave girl had become important to him in a way he couldn't explain. When they got to the apartment, Esme ran to the refrigerator with her drawing and a magnet. Caleb watched as she carefully positioned the paper, smoothing it out with her small hands. "There," she said, satisfied. "Now it looks more like a real home." And strangely, Caleb realized she was right. The empty, functional apartment where he just slept and ate had started to transform into something more, something that felt like a home. His phone vibrated with a text from Sutton. "We've located Patrick Wren. He's on his way back to the city. We'll question him tomorrow. Stay alert." Caleb looked at Esme, now humming as she opened the fridge for some juice. The first clues pointed to a family betrayal, a financial scheme, a possible kidnapping. And in the middle of it all, a 6-year-old girl who just wanted her dad back. The morning was sunny as Caleb made breakfast. Esme sat at the table, drawing in a notepad Caleb had bought for her the day before. The last 4 days had created a routine between them. Breakfast, drawing, a quick walk around the block, always vigilant, lunch, a movie or a game, and regular phone calls from Detective Sutton with updates on the investigation. "Pancakes are ready," Caleb announced in placing a plate in front of Esme. He had drawn a smiley face with chocolate syrup, something he discovered made her smile every morning. "Thank you," she said, setting her pencil aside. "Look what I drew." Caleb leaned over to see the drawing. A large house with a garden in front, 3 stick figures standing at the door. "It's beautiful," he commented. "Is that your house?" "It's the house we could have," Esme replied. "Me, you and Daddy when he comes back." Caleb felt that familiar tightness in his chest. Esme had a way of saying things that hit him right where it hurt. "That would be a very nice house," he managed to reply. The phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Sutton. "We've got news," the detective said without preamble. "Patrick Wren is in town. One of our agents saw him entering the Wren Technologies office an hour ago. Are you going to question him?" "We're getting the team ready, but he already knows we're investigating. His secretary said he got a call warning him about the police visit." "Damn," Caleb muttered, turning so Esme wouldn't hear him. "He could run. We're watching him. If he tries to leave town, we'll get him. In the meantime, stay alert. If he's involved in his brother's disappearance, he might come after Esme," Caleb finished, lowering his voice even more. "Got it. We'll be on guard." When he hung up, Esme was watching him with curious eyes. "Was that the detective?" she asked. "Yes. They're working hard to find your dad." "You look worried," Caleb smiled, trying to hide it. It was amazing how Esme could read his emotions. "Just thinking about what we need to do today. How about we finish breakfast and then play that card game I taught you yesterday?" Esme nodded, but her look said she wasn't completely convinced. The morning passed quietly. They played cards, watched a cartoon, and Caleb tried to keep the atmosphere light, despite the tension he felt. With every noise in the building's hallway, he instinctively placed himself between the door and Esme. It was almost noon when the doorbell rang. Caleb froze. He wasn't expecting visitors, and Sutton always called before showing up. "Stay here," he told Esme, his voice shifting to a more serious tone. She nodded, her eyes wide. In just a few days, she had learned to recognize when Caleb was in protection mode. Caleb approached the door silently. Through the peephole, he saw a man in an expensive suit with a neat haircut and the confident posture of someone used to giving orders. Patrick Wren. The face was similar to the photos Sutton had shown, and it also had some features that resembled Thomas. The same eye shape, the defined jawline. But there was something cold in his expression, something calculating. "Who is it?" Caleb asked, even though he already knew the answer. "Patrick Wren," the man replied, his voice smooth and controlled. "I'm looking for my niece, Esme. I was informed that she is here." Caleb's stomach sank. How had Patrick found out where Esme was? Who had told him? "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, buying time as he thought quickly. Patrick smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Please, Mr. Mason, don't make things difficult. I am Esme's closest relative now, and I've come to get her. I have all the necessary paperwork." The use of his last name confirmed Caleb's suspicions. Patrick had connections, information he shouldn't have. "I'm calling the police," Caleb said, reaching for his phone. "They're already on their way," Patrick replied calmly. "In fact, it was the Department of Children's Services that informed me where my niece was. It seems they're quite concerned that an ex-soldier with a history of post-traumatic stress is illegally caring for a child." The calculated coldness in his words hit Caleb like a punch. Patrick had done his homework, knew exactly where to attack. "Caleb!" Esme's small voice came from behind him. "Who's there?" Before he could stop her, she came closer and peeked through the crack of the door that the security chain allowed. Her eyes widened as she recognized the visitor. "Uncle Patrick?" "Hello, Esme," Patrick said, his voice suddenly gentle. "I've come to get you. You must be scared, right? But it's all right now. I'll take care of you until your father comes back." Esme stepped back, grabbing Caleb's hand. "I don't want to go with him," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to stay with you, Caleb." Caleb squeezed her hand, trying to convey safety while his mind worked frantically. If Patrick had really contacted social services, they would be there soon. And without official cooperation from Sutton, who must be busy with the investigation, Caleb would have no way to legally justify Esme's presence in his apartment. "Mr. Mason," Patrick continued, "don't make this harder on the girl. She's been through enough. I just want to take her home to a familiar environment." Just then, Caleb's phone rang. It was Sutton. "Patrick's there," the detective said without introduction. "He got a temporary custody order from a judge. I don't know how. He must have pulled some strings." "What do I do?" Caleb asked, turning so Patrick couldn't hear. "Legally, we have to hand the girl over," Sutton replied, frustration evident in his voice. "But we're going to follow him. I have 2 agents positioned near your building now. If he's involved in his brother's disappearance, he'll lead us to Thomas. What if he hurts Esme? He won't risk it, not with our eyes on him. But stay alert. I'll keep you informed of every move." When Caleb hung up, he knew he had no choice. Legally, he couldn't stop Patrick from taking Esme. But he also couldn't just hand the girl over without any guarantees. "I need to see the documents," he said, opening the door but keeping the chain on. Patrick handed him a folder with official papers, a temporary court order for custody, signed that morning. Everything looked legitimate. "May I come in to speak with my niece?" Patrick asked. "She seems frightened." Reluctantly, Caleb removed the chain. Patrick entered the apartment, his eyes quickly scanning the room before settling on Esme, who was partially hiding behind Caleb. "Esme, dear," Patrick said, crouching down, "I know you're scared, but I'm your family. I will take good care of you until we find your father." "Where is he?" Esme asked, her voice small but firm. For a moment, something flickered in Patrick's eyes, a spark of something dark that disappeared as quickly as it came. "We don't know yet. But the police are looking, and I'm also doing everything I can." "I want to stay with Caleb," Esme insisted, squeezing his hand even tighter. "I understand you've grown attached," Patrick said, glancing at Caleb. "And I'm grateful he took care of you, but your place is with your family, Esme." Caleb crouched down next to Esme, looking her in the eyes. "Esme," he said softly. "Your uncle has the legal papers to take you. I can't stop him." Tears started to form in her eyes. "You promised you would protect me." "And I will," Caleb affirmed, keeping his voice low so only she could hear. "I will always be close by, even if you don't see me, I promise." He took a small device from his pocket, no bigger than a coin. "This is a tracker," he explained, discreetly slipping it into the pocket of her pants. "With this, I'll always know where you are. If you need help, I'll be there in minutes." Esme's eyes showed understanding. She nodded slightly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Esme, we need to go," Patrick said, holding out his hand. "And I've already set up your room at my house. I even have some gifts for you." Reluctantly, Esme let go of Caleb's hand and picked up her backpack. Inside was the keychain with the letter W, which she never let go of. "Can I say goodbye to Caleb?" she asked. Patrick hesitated, then nodded. Esme ran and hugged Caleb tightly. "Don't forget your promise," she whispered. "Never," he replied. As he watched them leave, Caleb felt a mix of anger and worry. There was something deeply wrong with Patrick Wren, something that went beyond the suspicion of embezzlement, and now Esme was with him. As soon as the door closed, Caleb grabbed his phone and checked the app connected to the tracker. The small dot representing Esme was already moving, going down in the elevator. He quickly sent a message to Sutton. "They've left. I'm following." The reply came almost instantly. "We have 2 cars in position. Maintain a safe distance." Caleb grabbed his jacket, checked that his phone was charged, and left the apartment. In the parking lot, he saw Patrick's luxury car, a black BMW, pulling out. He got into his own vehicle and began to follow, keeping a safe distance. The drive took about 40 minutes, leading them out of the city toward a secluded residential area with large, spacious houses. Patrick finally stopped in front of a modern mansion, all glass and concrete, surrounded by a high wall. Caleb parked 2 blocks away, at a spot with a view of the property's entrance. He saw Patrick and Esme get out of the car and go into the house. The girl looked reluctant, dragging her feet as her uncle guided her inside with a hand on her shoulder. His phone vibrated. A message from Sutton. "We're in position. 2 agents in the house to the right, 2 others monitoring the back. Await instructions." The afternoon passed slowly. Caleb remained vigilant, watching the house, constantly checking the app that showed Esme's location. The dot remained inside the mansion, occasionally moving between rooms. As the sun began to set, Caleb decided to get closer. Using his military experience, he skirted the property walls, finding a spot where the vegetation offered enough cover to approach without being seen. He reached one of the side windows of the house, large glass panels that offered a clear view of the luxurious living room. Patrick was on the phone, pacing back and forth, gesturing with irritation. There was no sign of Esme. Caleb checked the app. The dot showed she was in a room on the upper floor. Circling the house, he found a tree near a second-story window. It was risky, but he needed to make sure Esme was okay. Carefully, he climbed the tree. From the highest branch, he could partially see into what looked like a child's room decorated in shades of blue and grey, clearly not prepared for a girl, contradicting what Patrick had said about setting up a room for her. Esme was sitting on the edge of a bed, still in the same clothes, her backpack held tightly to her chest. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. Just then, Patrick entered the room. Caleb adjusted his position on the branch, trying to stay hidden while keeping a view of what was happening inside. "Are you done crying?" Patrick asked, his voice completely different from the one he had used at Caleb's apartment, cold-y, impatient. Esme didn't answer, just hugged her backpack tighter. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," Patrick demanded, grabbing her chin and forcing her to face him. Caleb felt a wave of fury, his muscles tensing, ready to storm the house that instant, but he knew he had to be patient, gather evidence, understand Patrick's plan. "If you want your father alive, you'll do everything I say," Patrick said, releasing Esme's chin with a sharp movement. Caleb's heart raced. There it was, the confession. Thomas Wren was alive, and Patrick was behind it all. "Where is my dad?" Esme asked, her voice trembling but defiant. "In a safe place." And he'll stay that way if you behave. Tomorrow we're going to the bank. You have a joint account with your father, don't you? A college fund or something. Esme nodded slowly. Good. We're going to withdraw everything. Your father has already signed the authorization, Patrick said, showing a paper that Caleb couldn't see clearly from his position. After that, maybe if you're a good girl, I'll let you see your father one last time before our trip. Trip to where? Far away from here. Very far. The branch Caleb was on creaked slightly. Patrick's head snapped toward the window. Caleb froze, barely breathing. After a tense moment, Patrick turned his attention back to Esme. Don't try anything stupid. No leaving this room, no trying to call anyone, understand? Esme nodded, still hugging her backpack. Good. I'll bring you something to eat. Then I want you to sleep. We have a long day tomorrow. Patrick left the room, and Caleb could hear the sound of a key turning. He was locking Esme in. Carefully, Caleb climbed down from the tree and moved away, immediately calling Sutton. He confessed, he said as soon as the detective answered. Thomas is alive. Patrick is holding him somewhere and is using Esme to access some kind of joint account. Are you sure? Absolutely. I heard it with my own ears. He's taking Esme to the bank tomorrow, then plans to flee with her. Good work, Sutton said. We'll set up an operation for tomorrow. Catch him in the act at the bank and force him to reveal where he's keeping Thomas. We can't wait until tomorrow, Caleb insisted. He's keeping Esme locked up, threatening her. We need to act now. Caleb, if we go in without a warrant or without catching him in the act, he could claim breaking and entering. Any evidence would be thrown out. Caleb knew Sutton was right from a legal standpoint, but his protective instincts were screaming. I'm not letting her spend the night with that man, he said, determination clear in his voice. What are you planning? I'm going in. Find proof of Thomas's whereabouts, and if he tries to hurt Esme, Sutton sighed. Officially, I can't authorize that. Unofficially, keep your phone on. If you find something concrete, maybe we can justify a response to an anonymous tip. Caleb hung up and looked at the mansion. The sun had completely set now, plunging the property into darkness. Lights were beginning to come on in the various windows. He touched the pocket where he kept the pocket knife he always carried, a habit from his army days. His heart was still pounding in his chest after hearing Patrick's threats against Esme. He knew he had to act fast, and this time, he couldn't fail. The night had been the longest of Caleb's life. After hearing Patrick's threats, he couldn't just wait until the next day. With his military experience, he managed to infiltrate the mansion through a ground-floor window, partially hidden by bushes. Moving like a shadow through the dark corridors, Caleb found Patrick's office. A quick search revealed incriminating documents, bank transfers, betting slips, and most importantly, a map with the location of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. In the corner of the paper, a note, T.W., check daily. It was all Caleb needed. He took photos of every document with his phone and sent them to Sutton with a message, sufficient evidence. Thomas is at the warehouse. Patrick plans to use Esme tomorrow to withdraw money from a joint account. The reply came almost immediately. Team en route to the mansion. Another team heading to the warehouse. Get out of there now. But before Caleb could leave the house, he heard footsteps approaching the office. He hid behind a bookshelf just as Patrick entered, clearly agitated, speaking on the phone. We need to move up the plan, he was saying. Take him to the secondary location now. Yes, the girl is coming with me. We'll be out of the country before dawn. Caleb's blood ran cold. Patrick was changing the plan. They couldn't wait for the police to arrive. When Patrick left the office, Caleb followed him silently. He saw him go up the stairs and open the door to the room where Esme was. The girl was awake, sitting on the bed, as if she knew something was about to happen. Get up, Patrick ordered. Change of plans, we're leaving now. Where to? Esme asked, her voice small but defiant. House don't ask questions, Patrick replied, grabbing her backpack. We're going to get your father and then catch a plane. That's when Caleb decided to act. He couldn't let Patrick take Esme. Let the girl go, he said, entering the room. Patrick turned, surprised and furious. How did you get in here? That doesn't matter. The police are on their way. It's over, Patrick. Esme's eyes lit up when she saw Caleb, but Patrick pulled her close, gripping her arm tightly. It's not over, he replied, backing toward another door Caleb hadn't noticed before, likely a connection to another room. If you come any closer, I won't be responsible for my actions. You're not going to hurt her, Caleb said, advancing slowly. She's your niece. She's your family. Family? Patrick laughed bitterly. Thomas never saw me as family. He was always the genius, the favorite, the perfect CEO, while I was just the younger brother who needed to be controlled. Caleb, Esme called, her eyes full of fear. It's going to be okay, Esme, Caleb assured her, not taking his eyes off Patrick. Your uncle is about to realize he has nowhere to go. The sound of sirens began to be heard in the distance. Patrick looked toward the window, then at Caleb, calculating his options. It's over, Patrick, Caleb repeated. Let Esme go, and maybe you can get a deal. For a moment, it seemed Patrick would give in. But then, in a swift move, he pulled Esme behind the door, slamming it shut. Caleb rushed forward, hearing the sound of a key turning on the other side. Patrick, he yelled, banging on the door. Don't make things worse. There was no answer. Caleb tried to break down the door, but it was too solid. He ran back into the hallway, looking for another way into the adjoining room. The sirens were closer now. He found another door that seemed to lead to the same place, but it was also locked. That's when he heard a noise from outside, like breaking glass. He ran to the window in time to see Patrick dragging Esme toward a car parked at the back of the property. Without a second thought, Caleb went out the same window he had entered. He ran around the house, reaching the car just as Patrick was pushing Esme into the back seat. Patrick, he yelled. The man turned, and Caleb saw something he hadn't noticed before, a gun in his hand. Stay where you are, Patrick ordered, pointing the gun. The sirens were already at the property's entrance. Red and blue lights reflected off the mansion's walls. You have nowhere to go, Caleb said, trying to keep his voice calm despite his racing heart. Think about Esme. Don't do this to her. Patrick's eyes darted between Caleb and the police cars now entering through the gates. His face showed the desperation of a cornered man. It was then that Esme, taking advantage of her uncle's distraction, opened the car door and ran. Esme! Patrick yelled, turning instinctively to follow her. Caleb seized the moment and lunged, grabbing Patrick's arm that held the gun. The two men fell to the ground, struggling for control of the pistol. Caleb, with his military training, managed to pin Patrick to the pavement, twisting his arm until he dropped the weapon. Police! Freeze! A voice shouted. Several officers surrounded them, guns drawn. Caleb slowly raised his hands. He's disarmed, he said, moving away from Patrick. Two officers moved in, handcuffing Patrick, and who now looked defeated, all his previous arrogance replaced by a bitter resignation. Where's the girl? One of the officers asked. Esme! Caleb called, looking around. Here! The small voice came from behind a nearby tree. Esme slowly emerged from her hiding spot, her eyes fixed on Caleb. When she saw that Patrick was being taken away by the police, she ran crossing the lawn to reach Caleb. You came, she said, hugging him tightly. Caleb knelt, wrapping her in his arms, feeling the tremor in her small body. Of course I came. I promised. Remember. Detective Sutton approached, smiling slightly at the scene. We have good news, he said. The other team found Thomas Wren. He's alive, a bit dehydrated and bruised, but he's going to be okay. Esme lifted her face, her eyes shining with tears and hope. My daddy's okay. Yes, Sutton confirmed. He's on his way to the hospital, but he asked to see you as soon as he heard we were coming to get you. Caleb felt a profound relief wash over him. He hadn't failed this time. Esme was safe, and so was her father. It was more than he had dared to hope for when he saw that small hand making a help signal at the airport days ago. I'm so glad I get to be with you again, Esme said, holding Caleb's hand tightly as they walked toward the police car. Oh, I don't like my uncle. I was scared. He's not going to hurt you anymore, Caleb assured her. Never again. At the hospital, Caleb and Esme waited in the waiting room. The doctors were finishing their examination of Thomas Wren, and Esme's anxiety was almost palpable. She wouldn't let go of Caleb's hand, the keychain with the letter W held firmly in her other. "What if he's really hurt?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The doctor said he's going to be fine," Caleb replied, trying to reassure her. "Your dad is strong, Esme, just like you." Finally, a nurse appeared in the hallway. "Wren family, you can go in now." Esme stood up immediately, pulling Caleb by the hand. When they entered the room, they saw Thomas Wren sitting up in the hospital bed. He had a bandage on his forehead, a weary face, and a few days' worth of stubble, but his eyes lit up when he saw his daughter. "Daddy!" Esme cried, letting go of Caleb's hand and running to the bed. Thomas opened his arms, receiving his daughter in a tight hug. He closed his eyes hard, as if trying to hold back tears. "My little one," he murmured into her hair. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay," Esme replied, clinging to her father. "Caleb took care of me. He didn't let anyone hurt me." Thomas Wren looked over his daughter's head, his eyes meeting Caleb's for the first time. There was a deep gratitude in that look, along with a silent question. "Mr. Wren," Caleb said, suddenly feeling out of place, "I'm glad you're okay." "You're Caleb Mason," Thomas replied. "Detective Sutton told me what you did, how you found Esme at the airport, how you protected her, how you helped locate me. I don't know how to thank you." Caleb nodded, unsure of what to say. Now that father and daughter were reunited, his role was over. It was time to step away, to let them rebuild their lives. "Well, I guess I'll let you two talk," he said, backing toward the door. "No!" Esme exclaimed, letting go of her father and running to Caleb. "You promised you wouldn't leave me alone." "Esme," Caleb said gently, "you're not alone. Your dad is here now." "But you're my friend too," she insisted, holding his hand. "You promised." Thomas Wren watched the interaction with interest. "Please, Mr. Mason," he said, "stay a little longer. I'd like to know exactly what happened while I was detained." Reluctantly, Caleb agreed. He sat in a chair near the bed and told the whole story, how he found Esme at the airport, the investigation, the suspicions about Patrick, the discovery of the documents in the mansion. "Patrick always had money problems," Thomas commented after hearing everything, "but I never imagined he would go this far." Just then, Detective Sutton entered the room. "How are you feeling, Mr. Wren?" he asked. "Better, thank you," Thomas replied. "I heard they managed to arrest my brother." Sutton nodded. "He's in custody. The charges are serious: kidnapping, extortion, fraud, attempted kidnapping of a minor. He won't be getting out anytime soon." "Can I see him?" Thomas asked, surprising everyone. "Are you sure?" Sutton asked. "I need to hear it from him. I need to understand why." 2 hours later, with medical clearance, Thomas Wren was taken to the police station. Caleb stayed with Esme in the waiting room, while her father went into the cell block. Patrick was sitting on the concrete bench, staring at the floor when his brother entered. He slowly looked up, and for a moment, the two just stared at each other in silence. "Why, Patrick?" Thomas finally asked. "Why do this to your own family?" Patrick let out a humorless laugh. "Family? You call this a family? You with your company, your success, while I was always second best in everything. I gave you the vice president position. I trusted you to help run the company I built." "As your subordinate," Patrick retorted, "never as an equal." Thomas shook his head. "That doesn't explain why you tried to destroy me. Why you involved Esme in this." The silence hung heavy between them again. Finally, Patrick seemed to deflate, all his anger giving way to absolute defeat. "I'm in $1 million gambling debt," he confessed, not looking at his brother. "I didn't see another way out. I needed the money." "You could have asked me for help," Thomas said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "I would have helped you, Patrick. We're brothers." "You would have looked down on me. You would have made me feel even worse, even more of a failure compared to the perfect Thomas." Thomas shook his head, a deep sadness in his eyes. "You almost destroyed everything I had left," he said. "You almost took my daughter from me, the only thing that truly matters in my life." Patrick didn't answer, just went back to staring at the floor. "Goodbye, Patrick," Thomas said, turning to leave. "I hope you find peace someday." When Thomas returned to the waiting room, he found Esme asleep in Caleb's lap. The ex-soldier held the girl carefully, as if she were the most precious treasure in the world. "She hasn't been sleeping well," Caleb explained in a low voice. "I think she finally felt safe enough to relax." Thomas nodded, sitting down beside them. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything you've done for her. For us, anyone would have done the same." "No," Thomas replied, "not just anyone. You saw her signal when no one else did. You protected her when everyone else failed. You're a rare man, Caleb Mason." 3 days later, Thomas was discharged from the hospital. He and Esme would go home to try to resume their lives. Caleb went to help them get settled, carrying the few bags they had. When he finished arranging everything, he stood at the door, not knowing what to say. It was time to say goodbye, but the words felt inadequate. "Well, I guess this is it," he said finally. "If you need anything." "You're not leaving, are you?" Esme asked, looking alarmed. "Esme, Mr. Mason has his own life," Thomas said gently. "We can't expect him to always be around." "But he promised," Esme insisted, looking at Caleb with those big eyes that had captured his heart from the first day. "You said you would always be my friend." Caleb knelt to her level. "And I am. I will always be your friend, Esme." "That doesn't change just because you're home with your dad now." "Then why are you saying goodbye?" Caleb looked at Thomas, unsure how to respond. "Actually," Thomas said, "I was hoping you could have dinner with us tonight, and maybe tomorrow too. And the day after. The truth is, Caleb, you've become important to Esme, and to me by extension. I would very much like for you to be a part of our lives, if you'd like." The offer took Caleb by surprise. Since returning from the army, he had lived a solitary life without real connections. But in the last few days, taking care of Esme, he had felt alive again with a purpose. "I'd like that very much," he replied, his voice a little hoarse with emotion. 6 months later, the Wren's backyard was full of life. Esme ran across the grass, chasing soap bubbles that floated in the afternoon air. Her laugh, clear and carefree, filled the space like music. Sitting on the porch, Thomas and Caleb watched, each with a cup of coffee in their hands. "She's finally stopped having nightmares," Thomas commented. "The therapist said she's recovering very well." "She's strong," Caleb replied, "like her father." Thomas smiled, looking at his daughter. "I never thought anything good could come from those terrible days," he said. "But look at us now." Caleb nodded, understanding perfectly. Over the past few months, he had become a constant presence in the Wrens' lives. He helped Esme with her homework, took her to school when Thomas had early meetings, and had dinner with them several times a week. He had even started working as a security consultant for Thomas's company, using his military experience in a way that truly mattered. "Caleb, Daddy, look what I found," Esme shouted, running up to them with something shiny in her hands. It was the keychain with the letter W, which she had buried in the garden weeks ago, saying she didn't need it anymore because she had her dad back now. "I thought it was lost forever," she said, admiring how the metal shone in the sun. "Some things always find their way back to us," Thomas commented, exchanging a meaningful look with Caleb. Esme took the keychain and, to the surprise of both men, held it out to Caleb. "I want you to have it," she said, "to remember that you're part of our family now." Caleb accepted the small object, feeling its weight in the palm of his hand. What had once been a symbol of fear and separation now represented something completely different, a new beginning, a family found in the most unexpected of places. "Thank you, Esme," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The girl smiled and went back to running through the garden, chasing more bubbles. Thomas and Caleb continued to watch, side by side, their silences as comfortable as their conversations. The keychain gleamed in Caleb's hand, reminding them all that new beginnings can arise from the worst of days, and that sometimes we find family in the most unexpected moments. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.